Alright there YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Another video on Old Red, our project 1983 Peterbilt 359. Today's video, we're going to be installing a wet kit. Alright, so for those of you guys that don't know what a wet kit is, a wet kit is basically a power takeoff. It takes engine power, converts it into hydraulic power, can run different trailers. These are kind of our main basic components of our wet kit here. We've got our PTO. This takes power from the input shaft. This gear here rides on the gear that is on the counter shaft that's driven by the input shaft. So as your engine is spinning this input shaft on your transmission, it'll also be spinning this gear on your PTO. Now this particular PTO is a clutch shift style, so it's actually got a clutch pack in here that will engage this input gear to your output on the end here. So your typical standard PTO has a shift lever and a gear that slides into a gear to lock it in. So you have to come to a stop and stop your transmission from spinning, lock it in, and then you can let the clutch back out. This style, you don't need to do that. It's shift on the fly. You can be driving in, flip a switch, and now your PTO is engaged without ever coming to a stop or anything like that. So this is a clutch shift style. Drives your hydraulic pump, which creates pressure. You got a pressure relief valve, and then on the return side here, we're going to have a filter. Here's the fittings to hook the lines up to the trailer, and then of course you're going to have the hydraulic reservoir. Now a lot of this stuff's going to be as far as, you know, what parts to use, what size tank do you need, what size pump, you know, what your overdrive ratio is on your PTO. You know, all that's going to be very specific to the application of what you're going to be using the wet kit for. You basically need to select all of these components to what you have in mind of what you're going to use the truck for. Now there's a little bit to getting this PTO set up. You have to maintain a specific backlash on these gears where these gears mesh in with the transmission. So we're going to show you that. I did already go ahead and I got this tank mounted. Just a piece of 3.5 by 3.5 1/4-inch angle iron, bolted to some existing bolt holes, and then tanks bolted down to that. You never want to drill any holes in the flange of the frame to mount anything. It's going to significantly weaken the frame, so don't do that. Do some kind of a bracket off the side of the frame. But I suppose we ought to start getting this PTO in there. Now there is actually two different PTO locations on these transmissions. There's this one here on this side, and then there's this larger PTO mount here on the bottom. This larger mount's the one that we're going to be using. You're going to want to make sure that you don't have any oil in the transmission when you take this cover off. Otherwise, you get a hell of a surprise. This transmission should be dry. This is a fresh reman. There should not be any oil in it. Oh. So much for there not being any oil in this transmission, huh? Alright, so you're going to notice here that we've got multiple PTO gaskets for a PTO here. You'll also notice we've got thin, we've got thick gaskets. These thin ones should measure right about 10 thousandths of an inch. The thick one's 20. Now the reason for that is these gaskets actually act as shims to set the backlash on our gears here. Now typically one thick and one thin will get you right there in the ballpark, but we got to get this thing bolted up to find out. So we're going to grab one thick and one thin, grab our PTO. Now this jack here is, I believe, the cheapest transmission jack you can buy at Harbor Freight. It is horrible for transmissions, but they should have called this thing a PTO jack because it works fantastic for PTOs. So okay, now to check the backlash, we're going to need to remove this cover. All PTOs will have some kind of a removable cover on them for checking the backlash. They may look a little bit different from this one, but all of them will have some kind of cover. You're going to need to remove. Well, apparently my dial indicators are hanging out with my left socks because I can't seem to find them. So you're going to have to do this with the pokey end of a pair of calipers. Alright, so that wasn't working. I had to find a dial indicator and get that set up, but right at 9 thousandths of backlash, which is just perfect. We want to be between 6 to 12 thousandths, so 9 thousandths is right there in that range. Should be good to go. Go ahead and pop this off of here. Then we can go ahead and we can get our cover plate reinstalled. Okay, so now with my PTO ready to go here. Oh, get this up here. Oh, you heavy pig. Oh. Just gonna go ahead and these PTO support brackets are a fairly simple deal overall. You got a piece that bolts to the transmission, piece that bolts to your pump. I'm going to use another piece, kind of go in between here. It's going to do a couple things for me. It's going to help me space this back just a little bit. I'll sandwich this with some nuts on this stud here, and it's also going to help with my alignment there. So just gonna put those like that. Then once it's all clamped together, I can just go ahead and unbolt this from the transmission again. Take that off and we can weld this all together. Alright, so we tack welded all these both sides, rechecked it, made sure that it fit good, and it does, so we're going to go ahead and weld this up. Okay, quick little we're ready to put this on. Okay, so now that that's on there, first thing we're going to do is slide this bracket in place. Okay, so I've got everything all plumbed up here now. I didn't really film any of that, just it gets kind of fussy, you know, you're putting it together and all. I don't like that. I'm going to take it back apart, change something, put it back together, and you end up doing that a bunch of times. And I'll basically kind of run you through what we got here. Made a bracket come off this cross member. You know, we got our pressure relief valve here on this side. You got the line off the pump, comes into the bottom of that. You got the outlet to the trailer connection here. This is the return off of the pressure relief valve. So this needs to basically return to the tank. So we got that plumbed around. Tees into a fitting here. This is our return line. We got our filter here. Comes down an elbow. We got a shut off valve so we can shut this off to change the filter. Open it back up when you're done. That line then runs back. We got about a 2-foot section of hose here, so we got a little bit of flexibility. And then that runs into a port on the bottom of the tank. Now on the other side of the tank there's another port, and we've got another shut off valve on that one, and that one runs to the pump. Okay, so now under here on the pump we've got our feed line runs from the tank, comes into the pump, then our pressure line that comes out of the pump, and then this is one single hose runs all the way back to that pressure relief valve. Now a lot of this ends up being very specific to the truck that you're working on, what you've got for available locations where you can put things, where you can route things, where things are in the way, where you got to move things to make it work. You know, it kind of ends up being a little bit of a fussy process, but this is what I come up with for this truck, so maybe if you're doing this it might give you an idea. But basically after I test run this system, make sure we don't have any leaks or anything, we're going to take the deck plate, put it back on, and then we're cut out the deck plate so it fits over the top of these fittings. So, you know, all this stuff's all going to be hidden under here. And then you're just going to have your 2 connections sticking up to hook up your trailer connections. So that'll be nice. I'll leave everything out of the way if you're pulling a trailer that doesn't require the wet kit. And then, you know, it should be pretty clean to run your hoses when you are pulling a trailer that needs a wet kit. So I think that's going to work out pretty good. It's about negative screw my ass outside right now, so I'm not going to pull it out and mess with hooking up the trailer right now, or wait till we get a little bit warmer day to do that. But everything's pretty much done under here. Trans is full of oil. You got oil in the hydraulic system. I don't really see any leaks. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get my exhaust all put back together and clamped up and done, get the side box back on here, and start kind of trying to get some of this stuff wrapped up. Alright, so I'm starting to get the exhaust all back into place here, and I'd really like to try to do something to support this area of the exhaust. I don't want to do a frame bracket because your body's rubber mounted, everything's rubber mounted. These whole truck frames twist and move around. I'm afraid that if I were to rigidly mount the exhaust to the frame, it would actually be worse than doing nothing at all. And even if you did, like, say a strap in here, you know, if that strap starts slacking and then slamming tight, you know, that could cause you problems as well. So here's just kind of what I come up with. You got just a bracket here. It's going to kind of help support the weight. It's not going to be terribly rigid, so it should be able to flex and move around. Plus it's going to be tied to the body here rather than the frame. The stacks are attached to the body. I think this should be a good way to do this. Alright, so we got everything all clamped up here. We just need to make one more support bracket clamp deal there for the other side, and we're gonna get that done. Then we can throw the step box back on here and
will drive no more. So open that window, baby, so I can be outside and slow. And the neighbors won't be talking about the things that they don't know.
Alright, so it's several days later here now. Finally starting to warm up a little bit out. It's not exactly warm. I think it's 7 above 0 Fahrenheit out right now. But it's warm enough. I want to go ahead and I want to get this truck fired up. Test drive it around the yard here a little bit. Make sure the transmission, everything's working good. And I want to hook this thing up to my side dump trailer and make sure that the PTO is working properly. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and run you through here real quick how I set up my controls. I went ahead, because I don't have an air slide fifth wheel on here anymore, went ahead and used this air switch for the air slide fifth wheel. That now engages my PTO. I put the PTO indicator light right here, put a grommet on it just like the other warning lights here, so that we got a nice, it sits there and matches. You can see it fit right in with the other warning indicator lights there. It's right where you can easily see it. Now over here on this side, I used where some existing holes were already in the dash. There used to be a onboard scale deal mounted right here, so they already had some holes in here. You can see a few remaining holes from that in the dash here, but these two switches here, they run to the 6-way plug that I put on the trailer, and that controls my electric solenoid valve. So here's power on, which energizes the circuit. This is a 3-position momentary switch. Up. Raises the tub up. Down, brings it down, just like so. Alright, so I went ahead and I unhooked the trailer just so it's easier to turn around. We're going to run this truck up and down the road here real quick, just make sure that everything's working as it should. PTO's all working good. I'm happy with that. So far, just around the yard here, the transmission feels like it's shifting really nice, so good things going on there. Transmission's a lot quieter than the old 5 Series. Let's see. back across the intersection here, turn around. Let's see. Now here's one nice thing about an 18 speed. Go ahead and split reverse there. So anyway, guys, if you like what you're seeing, be sure to like, comment, subscribe down below. Thank you. Have a great day.